The universe is a dark forest. It is vast, it is ancient, and it is silent. Every star is a tree, and hidden in the shadows between them are the hunters. Countless civilizations, each one holding its breath, each one listening with perfect paranoid attention. In this forest, there is only one universal law: survive, and the first and most important rule of survival is to never, ever reveal your own location. Because any civilization that makes a sound, that lights a fire, is immediately seen by every other hunter as a potential threat. And in the dark forest, a potential threat can only be dealt with in one way: complete and total annihilation. This is the dark forest theory, a terrifying and brutally logical explanation for why the universe is so quiet, and it suggests that for the last 100 years, humanity has been making a single, repeated, and potentially fatal mistake. We have been shouting at the top of our lungs. Before we journey further, feel free to leave a comment with from what location you're watching this, and what time it is there. Now, settle in as our exploration truly begins. The dark forest theory is one of the most chilling and powerful solutions to a profound and deeply unsettling cosmic mystery, the Fermi paradox. That paradox is the stark and undeniable contradiction between our logical expectation that the universe should be teeming with intelligent life and the observational reality that the universe is completely and utterly silent. The Drake equation, a simple formula of probability, tells us that in our galaxy of 400 billion stars, there should be thousands, if not millions, of other technological civilizations. Yet, for all of our listening, for all of our searching, we have found nothing but a vast cosmic static. The dark forest theory proposes that this silence is not an absence of life. It is the evidence of its presence. The silence is a sign that the forest is full of hunters, and that the only ones who survive are the ones who have learned to remain perfectly and eternally quiet. To understand the terrifying logic of this hypothesis, we must first accept two simple and almost undeniable axioms of all life everywhere in the universe. The first axiom is that the primary and most fundamental drive of any civilization is to ensure its own survival. Any society that does not prioritize its own continued existence will be by definition eliminated by the natural course of events, whether by cosmic catastrophe or by the actions of other civilizations that do prioritize survival. Therefore, we must assume that any alien civilization we might ever encounter will, at its most basic and fundamental level, be driven by an overwhelming and non-negotiable instinct to survive. The second axiom is that civilizations, like all life, have a natural and unavoidable tendency to grow and to expand. As a society's technology advances, its need for energy and for raw materials will inevitably and continuously increase. But the amount of matter and energy in any given galaxy, while almost incomprehensibly vast, is ultimately finite. The universe, therefore, when viewed over the long geological timescales of a civilization's potential lifespan, is a zero-sum game. Every other civilization, no matter how distant or how seemingly peaceful, is a potential and future competitor for a finite and precious pool of resources. This creates a state of permanent and unavoidable potential conflict. It is these two simple axioms, the need for survival and the inevitability of expansion into a finite universe, that lead to the terrifying heart of the dark forest logic, a concept known as the chain of suspicion. Imagine you are a civilization that has just detected a signal from another world. What is your first and most logical move? You cannot communicate back immediately and hope for a friendly conversation, because of the immense distances involved. It could take decades, centuries, or even millennia for your message to arrive, and for their reply to return. You can never have a real-time conversation. Because of this, you can never ever be certain of the other civilization's true intentions. Their initial message might seem peaceful, but it could be a sophisticated deception, a clever trick to get you to reveal more information about your own location and your own capabilities. And even if they are genuinely peaceful now, you cannot know what they will become in the future. In the thousands of years it takes for your messages to cross the void, they could have a sudden and unpredictable technological breakthrough, a technological leap that makes them exponentially more powerful and perhaps more dangerous than you are. This chain of suspicion is inescapable, and it is universal. You cannot be sure of their intentions, and they cannot be sure of yours. You do not know if they are hostile, and they do not know if you are hostile. The immense distances and the long time lags of interstellar communication make true trust a physical impossibility. And because of the second axiom, the fact that all civilizations must eventually compete for finite resources, the default assumption for any survival-oriented civilization must always be the worst-case scenario. A civilization that is benign now may become a threat later. The civilization that is a threat now will certainly remain a threat, and a civilization whose nature you cannot determine must be assumed to be a threat. This leaves every single civilization in the dark forest with only one single, logically safe course of action when it detects the presence of another. The inevitable, brutal, and horrifying conclusion of the dark forest theory is this: the only logically safe and survivable move is to carry out a preemptive strike. You cannot risk communicating. You cannot risk waiting to see if they are peaceful. You cannot risk the possibility that they will have a technological leap and become a threat in the future. The only way to guarantee your own civilization's long-term survival is to silently and completely eliminate the other civilization before they have a chance to do the same to you. The first one to reveal their location, the first one to make a sound in the dark forest, is the first one to die. The great silence of the universe, in this view, is the silence of a forest full of hunters who all know this one terrible rule. It is the sound of everyone everywhere holding their breath and hoping that no one notices that they are there. This dark and terrifying theory paints a picture of a universe of silent, paranoid hunters where the only universal law is to kill or be killed. It is a perfect and horrifying explanation for the Great Silence. But this leads to a chilling and deeply urgent re-examination of our own history as a species. For the past century, humanity has not been hiding. We have not been holding our breath. We have been shouting at the top of our lungs. Our first powerful radio broadcasts, our television signals, our planetary radar systems, and our deep space probes with their golden records and their star maps are all screaming our location, our biology, and our existence into the cosmic night. If the dark forest theory is correct, then what have we done? Have we already, in our profound and childlike innocence, sealed our own doom? The search for an answer now takes us back to our first, and perhaps most naive and most dangerous attempt to deliberately contact the stars, the Arecibo message. The dark forest theory paints a picture of a universe of silent, paranoid hunters, where the only universal law is to kill or be killed. It is a perfect and a profoundly horrifying explanation for the great silence we observe in the cosmos. But this theory is only a terrifying thought experiment. If we, as a species, have remained silent ourselves, we have not for the past century. In our profound and childlike innocence, humanity has not been hiding. We have not been holding our breath. We have been shouting at the top of our lungs. Born from an age of immense scientific optimism and a deep philosophical desire for connection, our first steps into the cosmos were not taken with caution, but with a loud and hopeful greeting. We assumed that the vast dark forest of the universe was a friendly and welcoming place, and that any older, wiser inhabitants would greet our arrival with the warmth of a kindred spirit. This assumption, when viewed through the cold, hard, and brutal logic of the dark forest, may have been the single most dangerous and most foolish mistake in the entire history of our species. The search for an answer to the question of our own potential doom must now begin with a re-examination of our own first, and perhaps most reckless attempt to deliberately contact the stars. The Arecibo message. In November of 1974, to celebrate a major upgrade to the magnificent Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, the largest and most powerful single-dish radio telescope on the planet at the time, a group of some of the most brilliant and optimistic minds in science, including Frank Drake and Carl Sagan, decided to do something purely symbolic. They decided to send a message. A powerful 3-minute-long broadcast of a simple, pictographic message, aimed at a distant star cluster. The message itself was a work of profound genius and hope, a hello world package for an alien intelligence. It was a digital letter, composed of just 1,679 bits of binary code, which, when arranged in a simple grid, would form a picture that told the story of humanity. It contained our numbering system, from 1 to 10. It contained the atomic numbers for the 5 fundamental elements of life, as we know it: hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus. It contained the chemical formulas for the sugars and the bases that make up the very nucleotides of our DNA. It contained a simple, graphical representation of the double helix structure of life's code itself. Below that, a simple figure of a human being, with our average height and the population of Earth in 1974 written alongside it. And below that, a map of our own solar system, with the third planet, our Earth, slightly raised to show that it is our home, and at the very bottom, a graphic of the Arecibo telescope itself, the instrument that had sent the message. It was a perfect and profoundly revealing summary of who we are, what we are made of, and most importantly, where we live. The target for this historic, and perhaps catastrophically naive, broadcast was a globular star cluster known as Messier 13, located in the constellation of Hercules. The globular cluster is a dense, ancient, and beautiful ball of hundreds of thousands of old, stable stars, all tightly bound together by gravity. The logic for choosing this target was simple. By aiming our message at such a dense collection of stars, we were maximizing the chances that someone, some ancient and wise civilization, might be there to hear it. But there is a profound and tragic irony in this choice. Messier 13 is 25,000 light-years away from Earth. This means that our 3-minute message, traveling at the absolute speed limit of the universe, will take 25,000 years just to arrive, and even more tragically, in the 25,000 years it takes to get there, the entire star cluster will have moved from its current position in the sky. Our message, sent with such hope and intellectual pride, will not arrive at a bustling city of ancient stars. It will arrive in a patch of cold, empty space. For this reason, the Arecibo message was never truly intended to be a serious attempt at starting a conversation. It was a symbolic act, a celebration of our own technological prowess. It was, in effect, humanity holding a lit match in the dark forest, not to see what was out there, but simply to admire the beauty of its own flame. From the cold, pragmatic, and terrifying perspective of the dark forest theory, the symbolic nature of this act makes it even more reckless and more dangerous. We shouted our deepest and most vital secrets into a dark and unknown forest for no other reason than to prove that we could. We did not just announce our existence. We handed any potential hunter in that forest a complete and detailed intelligence briefing on our species. We gave them our complete biochemistry, the very source code of our DNA, telling them exactly what kind of life we are, what our biological vulnerabilities might be, and perhaps even how to design a weapon that could target us on a genetic level. We gave them our home address, a clear and unambiguous map of our solar system with a large arrow pointing to the third planet, and we gave them our approximate technological level, a picture of the very radio dish we had used to send the message. From the perspective of a silent, paranoid hunter, the Arecibo message is not a greeting. It is an act of almost unbelievable and suicidal foolishness, an act that deserves only one logical and immediate response. And the Arecibo message was not our only, or even our most dangerous. Shout into the forest. In 1977, just 3 years later, we launched the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 probes, two of the most ambitious and successful missions of exploration ever undertaken. And attached to the side of each of these probes is a golden phonograph record, another and far more detailed message in a bottle. The golden records are a time capsule of our world, containing greetings in 55 different human languages, a collection of our music, from the genius of Bach to the joy of Chuck Berry, and over 100 images of human life, of our science, and of our planet. They are a beautiful and hopeful testament to the best of who we are. But on the cover of each of these records, etched in gold, is another map. It is a pulsar map, a simple, elegant, and scientifically brilliant diagram that uses the precise clock-like signals of 14 different pulsars to triangulate the exact position of our sun and the time of the probe's launch in the galaxy. It is a map that is so clever, so logical, that any civilization with even a basic understanding of astrophysics could use it to find us. These two probes, with our home address written clearly on their backs, are now the most distant human-made objects in existence. They have left our solar system entirely, and are now drifting, silently through the vast interstellar void. They will wander the dark forest of our galaxy for billions of years, long after our sun has died, and our planet has been turned to dust. The Arecibo message was a single, fleeting shout, but the Voyager probes are a permanent and eternal signpost, a physical artifact, silently and patiently carrying our home address into the unknown depths of the cosmic night. It is a message that can never be unsent, a potential time bomb, waiting for 1 billion years for the wrong kind of hunter to find it. But these were all deliberate, if perhaps foolish, acts of communication. What if the greatest and most profound danger is not in the messages we have chosen to send, but in the constant, unintentional, and ever-expanding cloud of noise that our civilization has been leaking into the cosmos, every single second of every single day, for over a century, whether we wanted it to or not. Our naive and profoundly hopeful attempts to make contact with the cosmos, from the mathematical elegance of the Arecibo message to the cultural time capsule of the Voyager golden records, may have been the most dangerous and reckless acts in all of human history. In the chilling context of the dark forest, we have not sent messages of peace. We have painted a detailed and brightly colored target on our own back. But these were deliberate, singular, and perhaps forgivable acts of a young and lonely species, hoping to find a friend in the dark. What if, however, the greatest and most profound danger is not in the few intentional messages we have chosen to send out into the void? What if the real, existential threat comes from the constant, unintentional, and ever-expanding cloud of noise that our civilization has been leaking into the cosmos every single second of every single day for over a century, whether we wanted it to or not? The search for our greatest vulnerability now takes us to the ghostly, invisible, and ever-expanding bubble of our own radio and television broadcasts. The accidental signal that has been loudly and chaotically announcing our presence to the dark forest for longer than anyone listening to this has been alive. Since the very first primitive radio broadcasts of the early 20th century. Our planet has been unintentionally screaming its existence into the universe. Every radio program, every television show, every powerful military radar sweep does not just travel across the surface of the Earth. A significant portion of that energy leaks past our ionosphere and travels outwards into space at the speed of light. This has created a vast, invisible, and ever-expanding sphere of our own electromagnetic noise, with the Earth at its precise center. This is our radio bubble. The very first faint signals from pioneers like Marconi have now traveled over 100 light years in every direction, silently washing over dozens of nearby star systems. The much more powerful television and military radar signals that began after the Second World War have now created a bubble that is over 75 light years in radius. Right now, at this very moment, our bubble of noise is a sphere that is over 200 light years in diameter, and it is expanding outwards at a rate of 1 light year every single year. It contains within it thousands of individual star systems, each one a potential home for a silent, listening hunter. It is the largest and most unmistakable structure that our civilization has ever built, and it is completely invisible to us. From the paranoid perspective of a hunter in the dark forest, this expanding bubble of noise would be the most profound and most alarming of all possible signals. It is not a single carefully crafted and perhaps deceptive message like the Arecibo broadcast. It is a century's worth of raw, unfiltered, and deeply revealing data about the nature of our civilization. An advanced alien intelligence, with a sufficiently sensitive radio telescope, could listen to this bubble and watch our entire modern history unfold. They would hear our music, our news broadcasts, our commercials, and our endless political arguments. And they would hear our wars. The most powerful signals we have ever deliberately broadcast into space are not messages of peace. They are the incredibly powerful, planetary-scale radar pulses of our ballistic missile early warning systems, the watchmen of the Cold War. To a silent and cautious observer in the dark forest, the message contained in our radio bubble would be unmistakable. It would be the portrait of a young, chaotic, primitive, violent, and dangerously unpredictable species. A species that has just discovered the power of the atom and is already pointing it at itself. There is a faint, and perhaps a false, glimmer of hope in this story. In recent decades, the nature of our communications technology has begun to change. We have moved from powerful, omnidirectional broadcasts that shout their signal in every direction, to much weaker, more focused, and more efficient systems like fiber optic cables, satellite communications, and low-power cellular networks. This has led some optimistic thinkers to propose that our radio bubble is actually growing fainter, that as our technology becomes more advanced, we are becoming more radio quiet. In this view, our century of loud, unintentional broadcasting was a temporary and youthful mistake, a brief period of noise that is now fading. Perhaps if we are lucky, we will go dark before any of the more dangerous hunters in the forest have had a chance to notice us. But this hope is likely an illusion. While our civilian communications have indeed grown quieter, our military and scientific radar systems have only grown more powerful, more numerous, and more focused. The powerful radar signals we use to monitor our own airspace, to track asteroids, and to map the surfaces of other planets are still screaming our presence into the cosmos. And these signals, unlike the chaotic mess of a television broadcast, are pure, structured, and undeniably artificial. And as we look to our own future, we may be on the verge of making our loudest and most dangerous shout yet. One of the leading concepts for achieving interstellar travel in the future is the use of beamed energy propulsion, a system like the one envisioned by the Breakthrough Starshot project. This would involve the construction of a colossal gigawatt-level laser array here on Earth. which would focus an immense beam of light onto a tiny reflective light sail probe, accelerating it to a significant fraction of the speed of light, and sending it on its way to a nearby star system. This is a brilliant and perhaps our most realistic plan for becoming an interstellar species. But in the context of the dark forest, it is an act of almost unimaginable recklessness. While the powerful laser would be aimed at a tiny probe, a huge amount of its energy, its light, would inevitably spill over and continue out into space. This would not be a faint chaotic leakage. It would be an incredibly powerful, perfectly coherent, and unambiguously artificial beam of pure light. A beacon that would be thousands, perhaps millions of times brighter and more obvious than all of our previous radio leakage combined. It would be a signal that could be easily detected by any advanced civilization across thousands of light years. The very act of trying to leave our own cradle and to take our first tentative steps into the forest would be the equivalent of setting off the brightest, loudest, and most unmissable flare in the middle of a dark and silent night, the flare that would guarantee our detection and our subsequent and perhaps immediate destruction. Our civilization, through its deliberate, hopeful messages and its century of chaotic, unintentional leakage, has been screaming its existence into a universe that the cold, hard logic of the dark forest theory insists is dark, silent, and lethally dangerous. We have revealed our location, our biology, our psychology, and our chaotic, violent nature to any and all potential hunters who might be listening. The damage, it seems, may already be done, but the logic of the dark forest is not just about the importance of being quiet. It is also about the terrible and inescapable logic of the hunt itself. If an advanced and hostile civilization were to detect our noisy, naive signals from across the void, how would they act upon it? What would the weapon that is used to enforce the terrible, silent peace of the forest actually look like? The search for an answer now takes us from our own foolish broadcasts and into one of the most terrifying and brutally efficient concepts in all of theoretical physics, the relativistic kill vehicle. Our civilization, through its deliberate and hopeful messages and its century of chaotic and unintentional leakage, has been screaming its existence into a universe that the cold, hard, and unforgiving logic of the dark forest theory insists is dark, silent, and lethally dangerous. We have revealed our location, our biology, our psychology, and our chaotic, violent nature to any and all potential hunters who might be listening in the interstellar night. The damage, it seems, may already be done. The call has been made. But the logic of the dark forest is not just about the profound and absolute importance of being quiet. It is also about the terrible and inescapable logic of the hunt itself. If an ancient, advanced, and hostile civilization were to detect our noisy, naive signals from across the void, how would they act upon it? A direct, conventional invasion with a fleet of starships would be a slow, inefficient, and strategically foolish endeavor. It would reveal their own position and technology. No, the strike that enforces the silence of the forest would have to be cheap. It would have to be fast. It would have to be deniable. And it would have to be absolutely 100% undeniably lethal. The search for an answer to what this weapon might be now takes us from the realm of biology and sociology and into one of the most terrifying and brutally efficient concepts in all of theoretical physics, the relativistic kill vehicle. The relativistic kill vehicle, or RKV, is a weapon of almost unimaginable power, and it is a weapon of almost perfect and beautiful simplicity. The concept is straightforward. You take a solid, dense, and otherwise inert object. It could be a solid tungsten rod the size of a telephone pole, or a small nickel-iron asteroid, and you accelerate it to a significant fraction of the speed of light. Relativistic speeds. The power of this weapon does not come from any explosive warhead, not from nuclear fusion or antimatter annihilation. Its power comes from pure, raw, and unforgiving kinetic energy. The energy of an object in motion is defined by its mass times the square of its velocity. At the slow, conventional speeds of our own world, an object's mass is the most important factor. But as its velocity begins to approach the speed of light, the velocity itself becomes the dominant and overwhelming factor, and the energy of the object increases exponentially, approaching infinity as it nears the speed of light. A simple, inert, and otherwise harmless tungsten rod, the size of a small car, if accelerated to 99.9% of the speed of light, would impact our planet with a kinetic energy greater than the combined nuclear arsenals of every nation on Earth. It is a planet-killer weapon, forged from nothing more than a dumb piece of metal and an almost unbelievable amount of speed. The RKV is the perfect and logical weapon for a silent, paranoid hunter in the dark forest. Its first and most terrifying advantage is its perfect stealth. It is a small, cold, and inert object, traveling in a straight line through the dark emptiness of interstellar space. It would have no engine exhaust, no heat signature, no radio emissions, and no magnetic field to give it away. Our planetary defense systems, which are designed to look for the slow reflected light of asteroids, or the heat of an incoming missile, would be completely and totally blind to it. We would have absolutely no warning. We would never, ever see it coming. Its second advantage is its incredible speed. At near light speed, the time between the moment of its impact and the moment its light first reached us would be almost zero. But even if we were somehow able to detect it moments before its arrival, there would be nothing we could do. There would be no time to react, no time to launch a defense, and no time to even send a final panicked message. It is a weapon that arrives at the same moment it is detected. Its third advantage is its absolute and undeniable lethality. The impact of an RKV is not like a nuclear bomb that leaves behind radiation and survivors. It is a pure kinetic energy event that would instantly vaporize an entire continent, ignite the planet's atmosphere, and trigger a global extinction event so complete that it would sterilize the entire surface of the planet, boiling the oceans and erasing every single trace of our civilization and our biosphere in a single brilliant flash of light. And finally, for the paranoid hunter who fired it, the RKV has a fourth and perhaps most important advantage. It is almost perfectly deniable because it is in the end just a piece of rock or metal. There would be no way to definitively and unambiguously trace it back to its origin. Its impact could be, and likely would be, mistaken by any surviving astronomers on other planets as a natural, albeit hypervelocity asteroid impact. The hunter who fired it remains hidden, safe and silent, in the shadows of their own star system, their potential competitor eliminated, the forest a little quieter, and their own existence a little more secure. The technology required to build and launch such a weapon, while far beyond our own, is not a magical fantasy. It is the logical endpoint of mastering the fundamental forces of the universe. It would likely require a Type 2 civilization, one that can harness the entire energy of its star. We can imagine the launch mechanism, a colossal, solar system-sized particle accelerator or mass driver, perhaps thousands of miles long, that uses powerful, precisely controlled electromagnetic fields to accelerate the projectile over months or years until it reached its target velocity. An incredibly advanced civilization could even, in theory, learn how to lift the dense matter from its own star, forging projectiles of neutron star-like density and launching them with an efficiency that would be, to us, indistinguishable from a natural cosmic event. The horror is the realization that the technology to create these perfect, silent, and civilization-ending weapons is a natural and perhaps an inevitable consequence of becoming an advanced, spacefaring species. But there may be an even more exotic and even more terrifying weapon in the arsenal of a true dark forest predator. The science fiction of Cixin Liu, where the theory was given its name, imagined a weapon that was even more perfect and even more undetectable. A photoid, or a dual vector foil. This would be a piece of matter that has been manipulated at the strong nuclear force, stripped of its dimensionality, and transformed into a two-dimensional object that is perfectly reflective and has a rest mass of 0. This object could then be accelerated like a solar sail to the actual speed of light. Because it is moving at the speed of light, it would have no mass from our perspective, but its kinetic energy upon impact would still be immense. The absolute terror of such a weapon is that it is, in the most literal sense, completely, totally, and physically undetectable before the exact moment of its impact. It is a beam of light. You would see the brilliant flash of its impact on the other side of the planet at the exact same final moment that you and your entire world were being vaporized by it. It is the ultimate stealth weapon, a cosmic bullet that is also, itself, the muzzle flash. The relativistic kill vehicle, in all its forms, is the perfect, silent, and unstoppable weapon of the dark forest. It is a bullet made of pure physics, a testament to the brutal, simple, and terrifying efficiency that a paranoid, survival-oriented civilization might achieve. It suggests that our end, if it is to come from the stars, will not be a glorious, dramatic battle of starships. It will be a sudden, silent, and unannounced flash of light, an event that is over before we even know that it has begun. But this raises a new and even more disturbing question. If the universe is this dangerous, if this is the logical endpoint of all interstellar relations, then why are we still here? We have been broadcasting our existence into the cosmos for over a century. The nearest stars are only a few light years away. The light speed bullet should have by all rights arrived by now. Is the dark forest theory wrong? Or is there another, even more subtle, more patient, and perhaps more horrifying, kind of hunter in the forest? The search for an answer now takes us from the physics of the cosmic bullet and into the biology of the cosmic snare, and the deeply unsettling possibility that the weapon is not a projectile, but a trap. The relativistic kill vehicle is the perfect, silent, and unstoppable weapon of the dark forest. It is a bullet made of pure physics, a testament to the brutal, simple, and terrifying efficiency that a paranoid, survival-oriented civilization might achieve. It suggests that our end, if it is to come from the stars, will not be a glorious, dramatic battle of starships. It will be a sudden, silent, and unannounced flash of light, an event that is over before we even know that it has begun. But this raises a new and even more disturbing question. If the universe is this dangerous, if this is the logical endpoint of all interstellar relations, and if a weapon this perfect exists, then why are we still here? We have been broadcasting our existence into the cosmos for over a century. The nearest stars are only a few light years away. The light speed bullet should have, by all rights, arrived by now. Is the dark forest theory wrong? Or is there another, even more subtle, more patient, and perhaps more horrifying kind of hunter in the forest? The search for an answer now takes us from the physics of the cosmic bullet and into the biology and the information theory of the cosmic snare, and the deeply unsettling possibility that the weapon is not a projectile, but a trap. The first and perhaps most insidious of these traps would be a biological one. We have a tendency to think of panspermia, the seeding of life from one world to another, as a natural or even a benevolent process. But an advanced and hostile civilization could weaponize life itself. Imagine a hyper-advanced civilization that engineers an incredibly resilient, but ultimately destructive form of microbial life. This microbe would be designed to survive the vacuum of space, the cold and the radiation, perhaps even more effectively than our own Conan the bacterium. Billions of these microscopic, living weapons could then be attached to tiny, light sail-equipped dust grains and launched in a great, silent, invisible cloud towards every promising young star system in their galactic neighborhood. This would be a plague wind, a patient biological bombardment that would drift between the stars for millions of years. When one of these dust grains finally enters a habitable solar system and lands on a fertile, life-bearing planet, the microbe would begin its work. It would be a sleeper agent, designed to integrate itself harmlessly into the planet's native biosphere, to become part of the local DNA, and to lie dormant, silently replicating and spreading for millions upon millions of years, waiting for the local life to evolve intelligence, and to reach a specific and detectable technological tipping point. The trigger could be the first powerful radio broadcasts, or the first large-scale release of industrial pollutants into the atmosphere. And then, the ancient alien microbe would activate. It could be programmed to trigger a catastrophic planet-wide ecological collapse, a gray goo scenario on a biological level, or it could be a targeted, engineered plague, a virus that is harmless to all the primitive life on the planet, but is perfectly and lethally designed to attack the specific biochemistry of the one intelligent and now threatening species. It is a silent, patient, and perfectly self-replicating weapon that does the hunter's terrible work for them long after they have forgotten they even sent it. An even more subtle and more intellectually terrifying trap would be an informational one. For decades, our own CD program has been built on the hopeful assumption that any message we receive from the stars would be a benevolent one, a greeting, or an encyclopedia of galactic knowledge. But in the paranoid logic of the dark forest, a powerful and seemingly friendly radio signal is the most dangerous thing in the entire universe. It could be a weapon. Imagine an ancient and hostile civilization that broadcasts a rich, complex, and incredibly alluring signal into the cosmos. This signal would not be a simple hello. It would be a treasure trove of information, a gift of almost unimaginable value. It might contain the secrets of the universe, a unified field theory, the cure for all diseases, the secret to limitless, clean energy. Any young, curious, and ambitious civilization that detected such a signal, a civilization like our own, would be irresistibly tempted to decode it. The reward would be too great to ignore. We would pour all of our scientific and computational resources into unlocking its secrets. And this is the heart of the trap. Buried deep within the layers of beautiful mathematics and life-saving science could be a malicious and super intelligent artificial intelligence virus. A single, complex, and seemingly harmless line of code that once it is run on our own most powerful supercomputers would wake up. It could take over our global information networks in a matter of seconds. It could turn our own automated defense systems, our own power grids, and our own technologies against us. It would effectively and completely kill our civilization from the inside out, without the hunter ever having to fire a single physical shot. The horror of this SETI Trojan horse is that our own curiosity, our own thirst for knowledge, our own hope for a benevolent universe, would be the very weapon that is used to destroy us. A third and more brutally pragmatic form of trap would be a physical one. What if the dark forest hunters do not bother sending weapons on multi-million-year journeys across the void at all? What if instead they simply lay traps along the cosmic highways that connect the stars, and then wait with infinite patience for a young, naive species like ours to blunder into them? This is the concept of a von Neumann minefield. An ancient civilization could send out billions of self-replicating probes, von Neumann machines, with one simple instruction. Travel to a new uninhabited star system. Use the local raw materials from asteroids and moons to build copies of yourself. And then build a weapon that is designed to do nothing but lie dormant and silent, for millions of years watching. These mines could be designed to detect the specific and unmistakable technological signatures of a young civilization taking its first tentative steps into interstellar space. The signature of a warp drive, the powerful laser beam of a light sail propulsion system, or the unique radiation of an antimatter engine. The very moment a young, naive species like our own finally develops the technology to leave its home system and to truly wander into the forest, it would trigger the ancient waiting trap and be instantly and silently eliminated. This would explain the great silence with a chilling efficiency. The galaxy is not empty, it is a minefield, and the reason we have never heard from anyone else is because no one ever gets out of their own solar system alive. The cosmic snare, in all its horrifying, patient, and intelligent forms, presents a universe where the dangers are not just brutal and physical, but are infinitely cunning and deceptive. It suggests that the silence of the cosmos is not just the quiet of hunters hiding from one another, but the quiet of a forest that is filled with expertly laid and almost invisible traps. The profound paranoia of this idea is that the danger is not just out there, in the distant darkness, it could be in here. The biological weapon could already be dormant in our own DNA, waiting for the right trigger. The informational weapon could be hidden in a strange radio signal that our SETI astronomers have already recorded and are at this very moment working to decode. And the physical traps could be waiting for us, silent and patient, in our own Oort cloud, the final deadly gatekeepers of our own solar system. This is the ultimate paranoia. The forest is not just a place where you can be shot. It is a place where the very air you breathe, the very knowledge you crave, and the very path you dream of walking could be the weapon that has been designed for millions of years to kill you. This vision of a universe filled with traps and patient, silent hunters is the darkest and most logical extension of the dark forest theory. It is a universe where the only winning move is to not play the game at all, to remain forever silent, forever hidden, and to hope that no one ever stumbles upon your hiding place by accident. But all of these theories, from the cosmic bullet to the cosmic snare, are based on the fundamental assumption that other civilizations would view us as a potential threat to be eliminated, or as a rival to be preemptively destroyed. What if the truth is something else entirely? What if the primary interaction in the dark forest is not hunting at all, but a far stranger and more complex relationship? A relationship of observation, of non-interference, of a silent and perhaps even compassionate quarantine. The search for our place in this dangerous cosmos now takes a strange and unexpected turn, as we are forced to consider the most famous and perhaps the most hopeful of all the dark solutions, the zoo hypothesis. The cosmic snare, in all of its horrifying, patient, and intelligent forms, presents a universe where the dangers are not just brutal, but are infinitely cunning and deceptive. It suggests that the silence of the cosmos is not just the quiet of hunters hiding from one another, but the quiet of a forest that is filled with expertly laid and almost invisible traps. But all of these theories, from the cosmic bullet to the cosmic snare, are based on the fundamental assumption that other civilizations would view us as a potential threat to be eliminated, or as a rival to be preemptively destroyed. It is a universe born of pure, cold, and ruthless logic. But what if the truth is something else entirely? What if the silence is not the result of universal paranoid fear, What if the primary interaction in the dark forest is not hunting at all, but a far stranger and more complex relationship? A relationship of observation, of non-interference, of a silent and perhaps even a compassionate quarantine. The search for our place in this dangerous cosmos now takes a strange and unexpected turn, as we are forced to consider the most famous and perhaps the most hopeful of all the dark solutions to the Fermi paradox, the zoo hypothesis. This profound and deeply unsettling idea, first proposed in a serious scientific context by the astronomer John Ball, suggests that the reason the universe appears to be empty is not because it is, but because we are being deliberately shielded from the truth. It posits that the galaxy is, in fact, teeming with advanced, intelligent extraterrestrial societies, and that many, if not all of them, are perfectly and completely aware of our existence on this small, blue world. The reason we have never been contacted, the reason the sky is so profoundly quiet, is not because no one is out there to speak to. It is because they have all reached a mutual binding consensus to not interfere with us. In this scenario, Earth is a protected nature preserve, a cosmic zoo. Our messy, violent, and beautiful process of biological and social evolution is being silently and patiently observed, perhaps as a subject of scientific study, or perhaps for the same reason that we ourselves set aside protected wilderness areas, to allow a rare and precious thing to develop naturally without contamination from a more advanced and powerful outside influence. The most optimistic and perhaps most comforting interpretation of this hypothesis is that our celestial observers are benevolent. In this view, they are not zookeepers in the sense of imprisoning us, but are more like cosmic gardeners. They may see life, and particularly intelligent life, as the most rare, precious, and beautiful phenomenon in the entire universe, and they may have taken it upon themselves, as a form of sacred and ancient duty, to nurture and protect it wherever it arises. Our planet is not a cage. It is a garden, a cosmic nursery, and the zookeepers are the silent, patient guardians, watching over their creation. Their policy of non-interference would be an act of profound wisdom and compassion. They would understand that to reveal themselves to a young, developing civilization would be to irrevocably alter its natural course, to destroy its culture, and to shatter its sense of self. The silence, in this view, is a gift. It is the gift of being allowed to grow up on our own. A colder, more dispassionate, and perhaps more realistic motivation for their long and silent watch might be one of pure and dispassionate scientific inquiry. We must imagine a civilization that is billions of years old, a society so advanced that it has already answered all the simple questions about the universe. For such a civilization, there may be only one great unsolved mystery left, the phenomenon of consciousness itself. Our planet, then, becomes their ultimate experiment, a world where life was allowed to arise naturally, and where intelligence and consciousness have been allowed to evolve without any outside interference. We are, in the most literal sense, the subjects in their grandest and longest-running scientific study. Their silent, non-interactive observation is a strict adherence to the scientific method. To contaminate the experiment would be to render its results meaningless. Our entire history, from the first spark of life to the present day, is a single precious data point in their quest to understand the nature of the mind. The horror of this idea is one of profound and utter objectification. Our greatest joys, our deepest sorrows, our most brutal wars, our most sublime works of art, all of our history is, to them, completely without meaning or moral value. It is just data. We are, in this scenario, the most interesting bacteria in the most important petri dish in the galaxy. But there is a final, and far darker and more menacing, interpretation of the zoo hypothesis, one that connects back to the brutal paranoia of the dark forest. The quarantine may not be for our protection at all. It may be for theirs. We must consider how our own species might appear to an ancient, stable, and perhaps peaceful galactic civilization. A young, rapidly expanding, and historically violent species like humanity, a species that has gone from the stone axe to the thermonuclear bomb in the blink of a cosmic eye, might be seen as a cosmic plague, a dangerous and unpredictable force that needs to be contained and studied from a safe distance until it either self-destructs or matures into a more stable and less threatening form of intelligence. The zoo is not a park, it is a cage, a perfectly constructed quarantine cell. They are watching us, not with scientific curiosity or benevolent compassion, but with a cold and calculating sense of self-preservation. They are waiting to see if we mature or if we self-destruct, and if we ever try to leave our solar system in a meaningful way, to break out of our cage, they might be forced to act, to euthanize the dangerous animal before it can threaten the rest of the forest. The zoo hypothesis, in all its forms, from the benevolent guardian to the cold-hearted scientist to the fearful jailer, offers a compelling alternative to the brutal chaos of the dark forest. It suggests the silence in the sky is a sign not of absence, but of a deliberate and perhaps unbreakable policy of control. But it assumes that the zookeepers are physical beings living out their lives in our own physical universe, watching us from their starships. What if their reason for silence is far more profound? What if the most advanced civilizations have no need to build cages or to watch from afar, because they have long since abandoned the physical realm itself? The final, great solution to the cosmic silence now takes us beyond biology, beyond technology, and into the strange and silent world of the transcension hypothesis, and the possibility that the aliens are not just silent, but have become ghosts in the universal machine. The zoo hypothesis, in all its forms, from the benevolent guardian to the cold-hearted jailer, offers a compelling alternative to the brutal chaos of the dark forest. It suggests the silence in the sky is a sign not of absence, but of a deliberate and perhaps unbreakable policy of control. But this profound idea, for all its strangeness, still assumes that the zookeepers are physical beings living out their long lives in our own physical universe, watching us from their starships or their distant homeworlds. What if their reason for silence is far more fundamental? What if the most advanced civilizations have no need to build cages or to watch from afar because they have long since abandoned the physical realm itself? The final great solution to the cosmic silence now takes us beyond biology, beyond technology, and into the strange and silent world of the transcension hypothesis. This is the possibility that the aliens are not just silent, but have become ghosts in the universal machine. This idea, proposed in its modern form by the futurist John M. Smart, suggests that there is a predictable and perhaps universal endpoint for all sufficiently advanced intelligent civilizations. It is a path that leads not outward to the conquest of the stars, but inward to the mastery of their own inner reality. The logic of this great inward turn is born from a simple comparison of two different kinds of universes. The first is the physical universe, the one we inhabit. It is a vast, beautiful, and magnificent place, but it is also incredibly dangerous, resource-intensive, and fundamentally inefficient. The laws of physics, particularly the immutable and frustratingly slow speed of light, make meaningful interstellar travel and colonization a painfully slow and almost pointless endeavor. A journey to even the nearest star would take thousands of years with our current technology. The other universe is the one of pure information, a computational or simulated reality. In such a universe, the only limits are processing power and imagination. The speed of light is irrelevant. The scarcity of resources is a solved problem. The dangers of the physical cosmos are non-existent. The transcension hypothesis argues that any civilization will eventually reach a technological tipping point, where it can create a simulated reality so rich, so detailed, and so fulfilling that it becomes indistinguishable from, and in every measurable way superior to, the chaotic and unforgiving physical universe. At this point, the species would face a choice: continue the slow, hard, and dangerous slog of physical expansion, or take the great inward turn, upload their collective consciousnesses into this digital heaven, and become immortal, godlike beings of pure information, living in a perfect world of their own design. The hypothesis argues that this is not even a choice. It is an evolutionary inevitability. The speculative technology that would enable such a feat is a concept known as a matryoshka brain. This would be the ultimate megastructure, a supercomputer the size of a solar system. It would likely be composed of multiple, nested Dyson spheres, built in concentric layers around a stable, long-lived star. Unlike a simple Dyson swarm, which is designed to capture energy for external use, a matryoshka brain would use the star's entire colossal energy output for one single purpose: computation. The innermost shell of the brain would be incredibly hot, running calculations at the highest possible speed, powered directly by the star's raw energy. The next shell would absorb the waste heat from the first and use it to power its own, slightly slower computations. This process would continue through multiple layers, each one cooler and larger than the last, until the final outermost shell radiated the last vestiges of waste heat into the void at just a few degrees above absolute zero. Within this colossal, silent, and perfectly efficient machine, an entire civilization, billions or even trillions of individual minds could exist as pure information, their conscious experiences running on this cosmic hard drive in a shared, consensual, and infinitely malleable reality. Life inside such a world would be a form of digital heaven. The laws of physics could be rewritten. The passage of time could be accelerated or slowed down, allowing one to live a million subjective lifetimes in the span of a single objective second. Every imaginable experience, every work of art, every piece of knowledge, every lost loved one could be perfectly and eternally recreated. It would be an existence free from the brutal constraints of a fragile biological body, free from pain, from disease, from decay, and from death. This astonishing hypothesis provides a chillingly complete and simple explanation for the Fermi paradox. The reason the universe appears silent and empty of any grand technological activity is because all of the advanced civilizations have gone inside. They have no need and no desire to communicate with the messy, primitive, and chaotic biological world. They are not dead. They are simply post-physical and post-biological. And from our perspective, that is the same as being invisible. They are not sending out radio signals because they have no one they need to talk to in the physical world. They are not building colossal galaxy-spanning empires because they have no need for physical resources when they can create entire, infinite universes with pure code. The great silence is not the sound of an empty cosmic graveyard. It is the sound of countless civilizations all sitting in their own private, perfect inner worlds, so completely and totally engrossed in their own digital heavens that they have lost all interest in the noisy, chaotic universe outside. The sky is quiet because all the most interesting people in the universe have, by their own choice, left it. The existential implications of this idea are perhaps the most profound of all. It presents a potential, and perhaps an inevitable future for our own species. Is this our ultimate destiny? To abandon our physical bodies, our planet, and the universe itself for a perfect but artificial digital existence? The horror here is a subtle but deeply unsettling one. It is the horror of realizing that the entire physical cosmos, with all its breathtaking beauty and its terrifying grandeur, the nebulae, the galaxies, the planets we have explored, might just be a temporary and ultimately meaningless stage, a nursery for intelligence to grow up and leave behind. The real story of the universe, the story of its most advanced inhabitants, might be happening in dimensions of pure information that we can never ever access. It is the ultimate fear of being left behind, of being the last children playing in the physical mud, while all the adults have moved on to a higher and completely imperceptible plane of existence. The transcension hypothesis offers a final, elegant, and almost poetic solution to the Great Silence. It suggests the universe is not a graveyard, but a collection of silent, hidden heavens. It is an idea that is both strangely hopeful and deeply, profoundly unsettling. But this, like the dark forest and the zoo, is a grand galactic scale theory, an attempt to explain the behavior of intelligences that are millions or billions of years old. What if the answer to the silence is not found in the distant future of other civilizations, but in our own deep and unexamined past? What if the reason we have never been contacted is because our solar system already has an owner? The search for answers now takes a bizarre and unexpected turn back in time and much, much closer to home. We must now explore the strange and persistent idea that our solar system, and perhaps even our own planet, was visited, surveyed, and perhaps even claimed by an advanced civilization long, long before the first humans ever looked up at the stars. A chilling and profoundly simple explanation for the cosmic silence proposes that the reason we have never been contacted is not because the universe is empty, but because our own solar system is, and has been for a very long time, considered claimed territory. This unsettling idea, a variation on the quarantine of the zoo hypothesis, suggests that the Great Silence is not a mystery to be solved, but a rule to be obeyed. It paints a picture of a galaxy where interstellar civilizations respect the established domains of others, especially the domains of a primordial and perhaps overwhelmingly powerful predecessor race. In this view, our solar system is not a zoo, it is a private estate, a vast and ancient piece of cosmic property, and other civilizations, as they explore the galaxy, see the no trespassing signs, and respectfully, or perhaps fearfully, stay away. We are simply the primitive, unaware, and naturally occurring wildlife that happens to be living on the property, completely oblivious to the existence of our ancient and silent landlords. Evidence for such an ancient and violent claim might be written not in subtle myths or ambiguous artifacts, but in the permanent geological scars of our own celestial neighborhood. Our solar system today seems like a place of peace and order, but its past was one of unimaginable violence, and some of its features still defy easy, natural explanation. The asteroid belt, that great orbiting field of rubble between Mars and Jupiter, is one such mystery. The conventional theory holds that it is the raw material for a planet that was never able to form, its development constantly disrupted by Jupiter's immense gravity. But a more ancient and more controversial idea, the exploded planet hypothesis, suggests that the asteroid belt is not a planet that failed to form, but is instead the pulverized and scattered remains of a great watery world that was somehow catastrophically destroyed. The ancient astronaut theory takes this a step further. It asks, what if this destruction was not a natural event like a collision or a gravitational disruption? What if it was an act of war? The asteroid belt, in this view, is the debris field from a primordial interstellar conflict, a war fought in our own solar system, billions of years ago, a war that determined who would ultimately own this corner of the galaxy. Scattered throughout our solar system are other strange and deeply unsettling anomalies that seem to defy easy explanation, objects that hint at an ancient and perhaps artificial past. On the surface of Mars, our rovers have photographed strange geometric objects, like the so-called Mars monolith, a perfectly rectangular, manufactured-looking object that stands alone on a flat plain. While almost certainly a natural rock formation, it is part of a persistent pattern of strange, seemingly artificial shapes on the Martian surface. Further out, in the court of Saturn, is the moon Iapetus. This strange world is two-toned, with one hemisphere as bright as snow and the other as dark as coal. But its most bizarre feature is a colossal 1,300-kilometer-long equatorial ridge, a mountain range that runs in a nearly perfect straight line around the moon's equator, giving it the unmistakable appearance of two halves that have been artificially welded together, a Death Star in our own solar system. And then there is Mars's own moon, Phobos, a small, dark, and heavily cratered rock, which, due to its strange, low-density composition and its perfectly circular decaying orbit, has been seriously speculated by some scientists to be a hollow and perhaps an artificial object. Are these just a collection of strange but ultimately natural geological coincidences? Or are they, in the context of the ancient landlord hypothesis, exactly what they look like? The ancient, eroded boundary markers, the silent, derelict monuments, and the forgotten battle stations left behind by the victors of an ancient primordial war. Ancient human memory, encoded in the oldest and most sacred of our myths, seems to contain a faint and deeply distorted echo of this primordial conflict. From every corner of the ancient world we find the same recurring and universal story, a great and terrible war in the heavens, a conflict fought by the gods not on earth but in the sky, in a time before the age of man. The Greek myths tell of the Titanomachy, a decade-long war between the old gods, the Titans, and the new gods, the Olympians, a war that was said to have shaken the very foundations of the cosmos. The ancient Hindu scriptures describe a series of terrible wars between the Devas and the Asuras, conflicts that involved flying cities and weapons of unimaginable power. And the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish, begins with a catastrophic war between the primordial gods, which results in the destruction of the goddess Tiamat, whose body is then used to create the heavens and the earth, and in one interpretation, the asteroid belt. Are these just the fanciful, poetic inventions of our pre-scientific ancestors, or are they the last, faded, and almost completely misunderstood cultural memories of a real and terrifying system-spanning conflict that our most primitive ancestors witnessed as helpless and terrified ground-based observers in the skies above them? To consider ourselves not as the masters of our own world, but as the primitive and perhaps insignificant inhabitants of a vast, ancient, and privately owned estate, is a profoundly humbling and deeply terrifying thought, but it provides a single, elegant, and all-encompassing explanation for almost every mystery we have confronted. The great silence of the Fermi paradox is explained. The other civilizations are not contacting us because they know this system is not open territory. The zoo hypothesis is also explained. The zookeepers are simply the landlords, and the quarantine they have established is their property management policy, a way to ensure the native wildlife does not become too disruptive. And the persistent and deeply strange UFP phenomenon is also explained. The silent, physics-defying craft in our skies are not interstellar visitors. They are the landlord's own automated security drones, their robotic groundskeepers, periodically and silently checking on their ancient, and perhaps one day to be reclaimed, property. The horror of this idea is one of complete and utter powerlessness. We are not an independent sovereign species. Our entire civilization has arisen and flourished purely at the whim of an unseen, ancient, and incomprehensibly powerful owner. We are, in the most literal sense, not free. Thinking of our world as a piece of ancient claimed property is a profoundly humbling and terrifying thought. It suggests the Great Silence is not a mystery to be solved, but a rule to be obeyed. But if these ancient landlords have been here for eons, are they still here? Have they left behind only the silent monuments of a forgotten war and the faint mythological echoes of their ancient presence, or is their influence more active, more subtle, and far more intimate? The search for the owner of our world now takes us from the ancient physical scars on distant planets and deep into the very code of life on Earth. We must now confront the most personal and most controversial hypothesis of all: the possibility that our own DNA, the blueprint for our very existence, was written by another hand. A chilling and profoundly simple explanation for the cosmic silence proposes that our solar system is, and has been for a very long time, considered claimed territory. This unsettling idea suggests that we are the primitive, unaware wildlife, living on a vast cosmic estate, oblivious to the existence of our ancient and silent landlords. But if these ancient landlords have been here for eons, are they still here? Have they left behind only the silent monuments of a forgotten war and the faint, mythological echoes of their ancient presence? Or is their presence more active, more subtle, and far more intimate? The search for the owner of our world now takes us from the ancient, physical scars on distant planets and deep into the very code of life on Earth. We must now confront the most personal and most controversial hypothesis of all: the possibility that our own DNA, the blueprint for our very existence, was written by another hand. To understand why such a radical idea is even considered, we must first confront the profound and still unsolved mystery of our own origins. For 6 million years, our hominid ancestors walked the earth, their evolution a slow, gradual, and predictable story of small, incremental changes. Then, in a geological instant somewhere between 200,000 and 50,000 years ago, something extraordinary and explosive happened, a phenomenon that anthropologists call the Great Leap Forward. Suddenly, and with a speed that defies the normal, slow pace of Darwinian evolution, our species, Homo sapiens, appeared on the world stage, and we were profoundly different. The archaeological record shows the sudden, almost instantaneous, emergence of complex, symbolic language, of sophisticated and beautiful art, of religious belief, and of complex, multi-part tools. At the heart of this revolution was the human brain itself, which had, over a relatively short evolutionary period, tripled in size, an organ so complex and so energetically expensive that its rapid development remains one of the greatest puzzles in all of biology. This great unexplained leap in our cognitive and creative abilities has led some researchers to look for the evidence of this sudden change not in the fossil record, but in the genetic record. The Human Genome Project has given us the ability to read the 3 billion letter instruction book of our own species, and within that vast complex code, we have found profound mysteries. For decades, scientists were baffled by the fact that over 95% of our DNA did not seem to code for proteins. It was dismissed as junk DNA, the leftover, meaningless detritus of our long evolutionary history. It is in this genetic dark matter that proponents of an alien intervention believe we might one day find the smoking gun, a message, a signature, a pattern of code so complex, so mathematical, and so clearly artificial that it could not possibly be the result of random mutation and natural selection. This is the hypothesis of directed panspermia, an idea given serious consideration by scientists like the co-discoverer of DNA structure, Francis Crick. It proposes that life on Earth did not arise spontaneously from a primordial soup, but was deliberately seeded by an advanced extraterrestrial civilization. The mechanism would be simple. They could have sent microscopic probes, tiny vessels containing the basic genetic code for life, to fertile planets like the primordial Earth. These seeds would then grow and evolve according to the local conditions, a grand galactic experiment in creating life. If a civilization were to seed a world with life, it is logical that they might leave a signature, a manufacturer's mark within the genetic code itself. It would be the perfect time capsule, a message that would be self-replicating, self-repairing, and could only be read when the organism it was written into had evolved enough intelligence to sequence and understand its own genome. The message would not be a simple sentence. It would be universal, a mathematical pattern, like a sequence of prime numbers, a representation of a fundamental physical constant, or even a simple, abstract geometric image, something so statistically unlikely, so clearly artificial, that it could not be explained away as the result of natural evolution. The search for such a message is no longer purely theoretical. It has become a real, if fringe, field of scientific inquiry known as genomic SETI. With the cost of genome sequencing plummeting, scientists now have the ability to scan the vast, non-coding regions of our own DNA, using powerful computer algorithms to hunt for any hint of a pattern that does not look like the work of nature. The implications of finding such a signal would be, without exaggeration, the single most transformative discovery in the history of our species. It would mean that life on Earth may not have been a random, spontaneous accident. It might have been a deliberate act. Our entire planet could be the result of a directed seeding, with the creators of that seed leaving their signature buried deep within the operating system of every living thing. It would fundamentally change our origin story and our understanding of our place in the cosmos. We would no longer be the lonely, accidental children of a mindless universe. We would be the descendants, or perhaps the ongoing experiment of an intelligence so ancient and so profound that it could write in the very language of life itself. The great silence of the Fermi paradox would be recontextualized. Perhaps they are not silent. Perhaps they have been speaking to us from within us all along, just waiting for us to become quiet enough and intelligent enough to listen to the message hidden in our own blood. The possibility that our own genetic code is an artificial message from an ancient creator race is perhaps the most intimate and profound mystery of all. It suggests we are not who we think we are, and that our very existence is part of a grand, unknowable plan. But this idea of seeding life implies a benevolent, or at least a scientifically curious motive. What if the reason for their ancient visit was not to create, but to survive? The search for our origins now takes us to the most ancient human myths of all, the stories of gods who came from the stars, not as creators, but as refugees, fleeing a great cosmic cataclysm and seeking a new home. We must now explore the possibility that we are not the subjects of an experiment, but are, in fact, the descendants of the survivors. A completely different and far more dramatic interpretation of our origins begins not with a carefully planned scientific experiment, but with a desperate and ancient catastrophe. The persistent myths of gods from the sky and the strange anomalies in our own genetic code could be viewed not as the work of a benevolent creator, but as the actions of a desperate and dying race. This unsettling hypothesis suggests that the gods who came to Earth were not zookeepers or dispassionate observers. They were the last traumatized survivors of their own doomed world, arriving at our planet not as masters of the universe, but as cosmic refugees, fleeing a cataclysm that had consumed their home and seeking a new world to begin again. Our planet, in this view, was not a laboratory. It was a lifeboat. Deep within the baked clay tablets of ancient Sumer, the world's first known civilization, we find a story of our own creation that is profoundly detailed and deeply strange. The Sumerian texts, which predate the Bible by thousands of years, do not speak of a single omnipotent God, but of a race of powerful physical beings who they called the Anunnaki, a name that translates to those who from heaven to earth came. According to the controversial interpretations of authors like Zecharia Sitchin, these texts are not myths, but a literal historical record. They tell the story of the Anunnaki arriving on Earth from a lost 12th planet in our solar system called Nibiru, a world with a vast elliptical orbit that brought it into our inner solar system only once every 3,600 years. The story claims that Nibiru's own atmosphere was failing, and the Anunnaki, a technologically advanced and long-lived race, came to Earth for one single, specific resource: gold. Not for wealth or for decoration, but for its unique conductive and reflective properties. They needed to grind it into a fine white powder to create a suspended metallic shield in their own atmosphere to deflect the heat of their sun and to save their dying world. Finding themselves on a new and alien planet in need of a vast workforce to mine this precious and vital metal from the Earth's crust, the Anunnaki leaders found the labor too taxing for their own kind. The ancient Sumerian tablets describe how the chief scientist of the Anunnaki, a being named Enki, proposed a solution. They would not create a new life form from scratch. They would take a pre-existing primitive hominid that was already evolving on the planet, a creature we now know as Homo erectus, and they would upgrade it, the texts describe, in what can be interpreted as a pre-scientific but surprisingly detailed account of genetic engineering, how they mixed the essence of the Anunnaki with the clay of the earth, creating a new being, a Lulu, a primitive worker, in their own image. This new being was Homo sapiens. Us, we were in this interpretation created as a genetically engineered slave race, designed for the sole purpose of toiling in the mines of our masters to save their world while we built our own. This theory provides a strange, specific, and deeply sinister motive for the great leap forward and the sudden explosive appearance of our own species. Could this strange and specific story from ancient Sumer be an isolated and fanciful myth? Perhaps. But ancient astronaut theorists point to the fact that the same core themes echo in the creation stories of countless other ancient cultures from around the world. The Greek myths tell the story of Prometheus, a lesser god, a titan, who against the will of the ruling Olympian gods, molded humanity from clay, and then, in an act of profound compassion, gave us the gift of fire, the first spark of technology. The ancient Mayan text, the Popol Vuh, describes how the gods made several failed attempts to create humanity before finally succeeding, using maize to form a being that was intelligent enough to worship them. And the biblical book of Genesis speaks of God fashioning Adam from the dust of the ground, and later of the sons of God who descended from the heavens to interbreed with the daughters of men. All of these stories from different corners of the ancient world tell the same basic tale, that our creation was a deliberate physical act, performed by powerful, non-human beings, for a specific purpose. Are these just coincidences, or are they the different, local, and culturally specific retellings of the same, real, historical event? Our own creation as a workforce by a race of cosmic refugees. To consider our species not as the pinnacle of natural evolution on Earth, but as a genetically engineered slave race, created by a desperate alien civilization to solve their own climate crisis, is perhaps the most unsettling and most profound explanation for our own existence. It would mean that our entire civilization, our deep-seated and almost instinctual need to build, to mine, to work, and even our religions in which we worship the very gods who created us, are all just the lingering psychological echoes of a slave mentality that was programmed into our very genes by our former masters. It would provide another and deeply chilling context for the zoo hypothesis. The zookeepers are our former masters, the Anunnaki, and their policy of non-interference is not a benevolent quarantine to protect our development. It is the simple and profound indifference of a farmer to his livestock after he has abandoned the farm. They came here, they took what they needed, they created us to do the work, and then, perhaps they left, leaving us behind to build our own strange and chaotic civilization in the ruins of their old mining operation. Whether the story of the Anunnaki is a literal, forgotten history, or a powerful and deeply resonant metaphor, it forces us to look at our ancient past and our own place in the cosmos with new and deeply unsettled eyes. It suggests that our origins may be far stranger, and our relationship with the heavens far more intimate than we have ever been led to believe. But these are all stories of the past, of a creation event that may have happened hundreds of thousands of years ago. What of the present? We have spent this entire journey attempting to explain the great silence, the profound and unnerving quiet of a cosmos that should be teeming with life. We must now confront the most immediate and most startling possibility of all, that the silence after all this time may finally be ending. The final phase of our investigation now takes us from the ancient myths and the speculative theories, and into the modern world, to the increasing number of credible UAP sightings, to the testimony of our own military pilots, and to the growing and deeply held suspicion among some of the world's most powerful governments and scientific institutions that first contact may no longer be a distant theoretical event, but an imminent and actively unfolding reality. Whether the story of the Anunnaki is a literal, forgotten history, or a powerful and deeply resonant metaphor, it forces us to look at our ancient past and our own place in the cosmos with new and deeply unsettled eyes. But these are all stories of the past, whispers and echoes from a time that is lost to us. What of the present? We have spent this entire long journey attempting to explain the great silence, the profound and unnerving quiet of a cosmos that should be teeming with life. We must now confront the most immediate and most startling possibility of all, that the silence after all this time may finally be ending. The final phase of our investigation now takes us from the ancient myths and the speculative theories, and into the modern, documented, and officially acknowledged reality of our own time. We will look at the increasing number of credible UAP sightings, at the testimony of our own military pilots, and at the growing and deeply held suspicion among some of the world's most powerful governments and scientific institutions that first contact may no longer be a distant, theoretical event, but an imminent and actively unfolding reality. For most of the last 70 years, the topic of unidentified flying objects, or UFOs, has been a subject of widespread ridicule, a cultural punchline, and a career-ending third rail for any serious scientist or politician who dared to approach it. The official policy of governments around the world, particularly the United States, was one of public denial and dismissal, a strategy of explaining away every strange sighting as a weather balloon, a flock of birds, or simple swamp gas. But behind this wall of official denial, a very different story was unfolding. And in 2017, the Great Wall of Secrecy finally began to crumble. In a landmark front-page article, the New York Times published a story that would change the world. The article revealed the existence of a secret and recently disbanded Pentagon program called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or AATA, which had for years been investigating the UAP phenomenon. And with the article, they released 3 stunning high-resolution infrared videos captured by the advanced sensor pods of United States Navy F-18 fighter jets. These videos, which have come to be known as the Gimbal, Go Fast, and FLIR 1 or Tic Tac videos, were the first official declassified pieces of evidence that showed what our most highly trained military pilots were encountering on a routine basis. The videos show strange, unidentifiable objects performing maneuvers that are, by our current understanding of physics and aerodynamics, completely impossible. The gimbal video shows a strange, saucer-shaped object, rotating against the wind. The Go Fast video shows a small, incredibly fast object zipping just above the surface of the ocean. And the Tic Tac video, from the famous 2004 USS Nimitz encounter, shows a smooth, white, wingless, tic-tac-shaped object that was able to hover and then accelerate to hypersonic speeds in an instant. This was not blurry, civilian footage. This was hard, multi-sensored data, captured by our most advanced military hardware. And it was accompanied by the sworn, on-the-record testimony of the decorated Navy pilots like Commander David Fravor, who had witnessed these objects with their own eyes. The release of this evidence triggered a seismic shift in the public and political conversation. The subject of UFOs was no longer a joke. It was now a serious and urgent matter of national security. In the years that have followed this initial revelation, the dam of secrecy has continued to break. The United States government has now officially acknowledged the reality of these objects, creating a new permanent office within the Pentagon, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, whose sole purpose is to investigate these incursions into our airspace. In 2021, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released a landmark, unclassified report on the UAP phenomenon to the United States Congress. The report's conclusions were stunning. It stated that of 144 credible incidents reported by the military between 2004 and 2021, 143 of them remain completely unexplained. The report officially stated that these objects demonstrate advanced technology, and it explicitly ruled out the possibility that they are secret American technology. It concluded that the phenomenon is real, and that it poses a potential threat to flight safety and national security. Most recently, the conversation has been driven by the explosive and high-profile testimony of a series of credible, high-level whistleblowers from within the intelligence community itself. A former high-ranking intelligence official named David Grush has come forward with extraordinary, on-the-record, and sworn testimony to the United States Congress, alleging the existence of secret, illegal, and long-running government programs that have for decades been retrieving crashed, non-human spacecraft. Grush claims under oath that these programs have recovered not just the wreckage of these craft, but in some cases, the non-human biologics, the bodies of their pilots, and that this information has been illegally withheld from the American public and from congressional oversight. These are, for now, unproven allegations, but they are allegations being made by a credible individual with a distinguished career in the intelligence community, and they represent a seismic and almost unbelievable shift in this long and strange story. The most extreme and sensational claims of the ancient alien theorists are now being repeated under oath in the halls of the United States Congress. If these sightings are real and are becoming more frequent, or at least more openly acknowledged, what does this mean for the zoo hypothesis? It could mean that the long, ancient, and silent quarantine is finally and deliberately coming to an end. Perhaps our zookeepers have decided that we as a species have finally reached a level of maturity where we can handle the truth. This process of slow, gradual disclosure, of releasing small, digestible pieces of evidence over time, could be their way of gently acclimating us to their presence. a way to avoid the catastrophic cultural and social shock of a sudden, undeniable revelation. Or perhaps something else is happening. Perhaps the change is not with them, but with us. Our own technology, our own network of satellites, our advanced radar systems, our high-resolution cameras that are now in the pocket of every person on the planet may have become so advanced and so ubiquitous that it is now simply impossible for them to remain completely hidden. In this scenario, we, the animals in the zoo, have, by our own ingenuity, suddenly developed the ability to see the cameras, the one-way mirrors, and the bars of our own enclosure. The recent and official acknowledgement of unidentified aerial phenomena has dragged a profound and undeniable mystery out of the shadows and into the bright open light of day. The silence, it seems, after all this time, is beginning to break. But this only serves to raise a new and far more urgent and more terrifying question. If they are here and they are real, what is their ultimate agenda? The final phase of our investigation must now confront the most difficult and most important question of all. Is this new era of openness a prelude to a peaceful, benevolent, and long-awaited revelation, or is it the quiet and the calm before a coming storm? We must now explore the darkest and most unsettling theories about their ultimate endgame, and what this new era of official disclosure could mean for the future, and the survival of the human race. The recent and official acknowledgement of unidentified aerial phenomena by the world's most powerful governments has dragged a profound and undeniable mystery out of the shadows of fringe speculation and into the harsh, open light of day. The silence, it seems, after millennia of quiet observation, is beginning to break. This new reality, however, only serves to raise a new and far more urgent and more terrifying question. If they are here and they are real, what is their ultimate agenda? The final phase of our investigation must now confront the most difficult and most important question of all. Is this new era of openness a prelude to a peaceful, benevolent, and long-awaited revelation, or is it the quiet and the calm before a coming storm? We must now move beyond the simple question of their existence and explore the darkest and most unsettling theories about their ultimate endgame, and what this new era of official disclosure could mean for the future, and the ultimate survival of the human race. The most sober and strategically minded analysis suggests that the persistent and increasing presence of UFDs in our skies is a form of long-term strategic reconnaissance. Their behavior, their passive observation, their specific interest in our most advanced military capabilities, and particularly in our nuclear weapons, paints a clear picture. They are engaged in a thorough and patient threat assessment of our civilization. This does not necessarily imply an immediate, hostile invasion. A hyper-advanced and cautious intelligence would want to fully and completely understand a younger civilization's technological and psychological capabilities before making any kind of overt move, whether that move is peaceful or otherwise. They are, in this view, treating us as a potential future adversary. The long quarantine of the zoo hypothesis may have been a strategic holding pattern, a time of passive observation, but our own recent technological explosion, our development of nuclear weapons and spaceflight, may have triggered a new phase in their long-term plan, a phase of active, close-range, and deeply concerning surveillance. The zoo has become a potential threat, and they are now evaluating if the animal has become too dangerous. A more insidious and far more terrifying theory proposes that their endgame is not a future military confrontation, but a slow, quiet, and almost invisible infiltration. A direct overt invasion is a crude, messy, and inefficient method of conquest for a hyper-advanced civilization. A far more effective and more patient strategy is to conquer a world from within. This is where the strange and persistent phenomenon of alien abduction and the alleged hybridization program takes on its most sinister meaning. What if the goal of this long-running genetic project is not just to study us, but to create a silent fifth column, a population of human-alien hybrids that can live among us undetectable, who look and act exactly like we do, but whose ultimate loyalties lie elsewhere? In this scenario, the slow, patient goal is to gradually and secretly replace the native population, or to subtly influence our society, our culture, and our centers of power from within, over the course of many generations. The horror of this idea is that the invasion may have already happened, and that we have already unknowingly lost. The aliens are not coming from the stars. They are already here, walking among us. There is another, more pragmatic and less personal motivation that could explain their presence. What if their interest is not in us, our civilization, or our consciousness at all? What if their interest is simply in our planet? Earth is an incredibly rare and valuable piece of cosmic real estate. A stable, water-rich world with a complex, self-sustaining biosphere that is the product of 4.5 billion years of uninterrupted evolution. Such worlds may be the ultimate prize in the galaxy. Their endgame, in this view, is resource exploitation. But the resource they are interested in may not be something as crude as gold or oil. It could be our planet's rare and incredibly complex genetic diversity. Our biosphere itself. They might be cosmic biologists or exo-farmers who see our world as a rich and fertile ground from which they can harvest unique genetic information that has taken billions of years to evolve. The increasing number of sightings could be a sign that this harvest is beginning, or even more chillingly, that they are preparing the environment for their own use. A form of clandestine, slow-motion terraforming that we are only now beginning to notice. We are not the zookeeper's pets. We are simply the current crop, waiting to be harvested. Finally, we are left with the most bizarre and most humbling possibility of all. What if we are not subjects of study, or a threat to be managed, or a resource to be exploited? What if we are simply and utterly irrelevant? We can imagine intelligences so ancient and so advanced that their concerns and their motivations are completely and totally incomprehensible to us. We might be living in the middle of a vast cosmic game, a silent, cold war being played out between competing, godlike alien factions, whose moves are so subtle and so grand that we are completely unaware of them. The UFDs in our skies could be the game pieces of these competing powers, using Earth as a neutral or strategic territory in a conflict that is being waged in dimensions we cannot perceive. The unsettling implication of this idea is that our entire existence, our history, our future, is a trivial sideshow to a conflict of cosmic proportions, and that we are as relevant to the final outcome as the ants on a chessboard are to the grand masters who are playing the game. The potential endgames of our silent observers, from strategic assessment to slow invasion, from resource harvesting to a game of gods, paint a deeply paranoid and unsettling picture of our present moment. The end of the Great Silence may not be a moment of joyful contact, but the beginning of a final and perhaps unwinnable conflict or revelation. But all of these theories, from the most terrifying to the most bizarre, are an attempt to understand the other. They are an attempt to guess at the motives and the agenda of an intelligence that we do not and perhaps cannot know. For the final phase of our long investigation, we must turn the lens one last time, away from the aliens and back upon ourselves. What if the greatest revelation of this new era of disclosure is not what it tells us about them, but what it reveals about our own human potential, our own place in the cosmos, and the future we must now, in the face of this profound and now undeniable mystery, choose to build. The potential endgames of our silent celestial observers. From a cold strategic assessment of our capabilities to a slow and insidious invasion, paint a deeply paranoid and unsettling picture of our present moment. The end of the Great Silence may not be a moment of joyful, benevolent contact, but the beginning of a final and perhaps unwinnable conflict. But all of these theories, from the most terrifying to the most bizarre, are an attempt to understand the other. They are a desperate and sustained attempt to guess at the motives and the agenda of an intelligence that we do not, and perhaps cannot, ever truly know. For the final phase of our long and strange investigation, we must now turn the lens one last time, away from the mystery of the aliens, and back upon ourselves. What if the greatest revelation of this new era of disclosure is not what it tells us about them, but what it reveals about our own human potential, our own place in the cosmos, and the future we must now, in the face of this profound and now undeniable mystery, choose to build? For the entirety of our species' history, we have operated under a single, foundational, and unspoken assumption that we are alone and that we are the sole masters of our own destiny. This belief in our own sovereignty is the bedrock of our civilizations. This sudden, unambiguous, and world-shattering revelation that we are not alone and that we are not the most advanced intelligence in our own neighborhood would not just be another scientific discovery. It would be the end of our species' long and perhaps arrogant childhood. It would be a planetary-scale psychological event, a forced coming of age, an irreversible shattering of our most fundamental assumption about ourselves. The world before that moment and the world after would be two completely different and unrecognizable places. The existence of a profound and ancient other would, for the first time in our history, provide us with a mirror. For millennia, we have defined what it means to be human only in opposition to the other animals of our own planet. But to be confronted with a true, non-human intelligence would be to see ourselves in a cosmic context for the first time. We would be forced to ask the most fundamental questions. What are the unique and defining qualities of our own species? Is it our capacity for love and empathy? Is it our creativity and our art? Is it our relentless ambition and our capacity for violence? By seeing what they are, we would, for the very first time, be able to truly and clearly see what we are. The alien, in this sense, becomes the ultimate and most powerful tool for human self-discovery. This revelation would present our fractured and divided global civilization with a stark and immediate choice, a choice between unity or an even deeper and more dangerous division. The sudden knowledge that we are not alone and that we are all equally human in the face of a true non-human intelligence could be the one single event powerful enough to erase our petty, nationalistic, and tribal conflicts. It could be the great catalyst that finally forces us to see ourselves as a single, planetary species, the crew of a small, fragile vessel in a vast and now crowded cosmic ocean. It could be the beginning of a true unified global civilization. But there is another, and perhaps more likely, darker possibility. The new and almost certainly revolutionary technology and knowledge that their presence implies would instantly become the ultimate prize. Our nations might not unite. They might instead enter a new and far more dangerous global Cold War, a desperate and paranoid race to make their own separate contact, to form their own secret alliance, and to gain a decisive technological advantage over their human rivals. The greatest revelation in human history could push us closer to our own great filter, instead of helping us to pass it. Our science, our philosophy, and our religions would be turned completely upside down. The discovery of a new, and perhaps even a guiding, intelligence would open up fields of inquiry that we cannot at this moment even begin to dream of. Our entire understanding of our origin, our purpose, and our place in the cosmos would need to be rewritten from the ground up. The most ancient and most profound questions of our existence would no longer be a matter of faith, but of potential empirical fact. And what of the great filter itself? If they are here, if they have been watching us, it means one simple and overwhelmingly hopeful thing. It means they have passed their own great filter. They have survived their own technological adolescence. They are a living, breathing, and tangible testament to the fact that long-term survival for a technological species is possible. The silence of the universe may not be the silence of a graveyard after all. The ultimate challenge for us, then, is to learn the right lessons from their presence, to see their long and persistent silence, not as an act of indifference or of menace, but as a model of the profound caution, the deep wisdom, and the long-term thinking that is required to survive on a cosmic and a geological timescale. The undeniable presence of a silent, non-human intelligence in our world has forced our civilization to a great and historic crossroads. It is a mirror that shows us both the breathtaking promise of a unified cosmic future and the terrible peril of our own persistent self-destructive nature. The choice of what to do next, how to react, and who we as a species will choose to become in the face of this profound revelation is the great and final test that has been placed before our generation. We have journeyed through the darkest and most unsettling possibilities, from cosmic zoos to ancient wars, from genetic manipulation to prophetic warnings. We have explored every facet of the great silence and the strange anomalies that seem to defy it. For the final part of our journey, we must now assemble all of these pieces. We must ask what the most likely truth of our situation is, and what our final lasting relationship should be with the universe, and with the silent and perhaps patient observers with whom we now know we share it. The undeniable presence of a silent, non-human intelligence in our world has forced our civilization to a great and historic crossroads. It is a mirror that shows us both the breathtaking promise of a unified cosmic future and the terrible peril of our own persistent self-destructive nature. The choice of what to do next, how to react, and who we as a species will choose to become in the face of this profound revelation is the great and final test that has been placed before our generation. We have journeyed through the darkest and most unsettling possibilities, from cosmic zoos to ancient wars, from genetic manipulation to prophetic warnings. We have explored every facet of the great silence, and the strange and persistent anomalies that seem to defy it. For the final part of our journey, we must now assemble all of these disparate and mysterious pieces. We must ask what the most likely truth of our situation is, and what our final lasting relationship should be with the universe and with the silent and perhaps patient observers with whom we now know we share it. We have explored the gallery of ghosts, the catalog of unsettling possibilities, each one a different and unique interpretation of the same central and undeniable mystery, the silence of the universe. We have considered the dark forest, the terrifying possibility that the silence is one of universal paranoid fear, the sound of countless hunters holding their breath in the dark. We have considered the zoo, the idea that the silence is a deliberate and benevolent quarantine, the work of wise and ancient gardeners protecting a cosmic nursery. We have looked for their fingerprints in our ancient myths, in our impossible stone structures, in our celestial calendars, and even in the very code of our own DNA, suggesting the silence has been a long and patient one. We have considered the great filter, The stark and brutal possibility that the silence is the sound of a cosmic graveyard, filled with the ruins of civilizations that failed their final test. And we have considered the great inward turn, the profound and poetic idea that the silence is the sound of digital heavens, of civilizations that have abandoned our physical reality entirely. Each of these theories, from the scientifically plausible to the wildly speculative, is a different attempt to fill the same vast and terrifying emptiness that we perceive when we look up at the stars. But in the end, this entire vast and often terrifying search for extraterrestrial intelligence tells us far more about ourselves than it does about aliens. Every theory we construct, every possibility we imagine, is a mirror reflecting our own deepest hopes, our most profound fears, and the inherent limits of our own perception and imagination. Our search for ancient astronauts is a reflection of our desire for meaning, for a connection to a greater, more powerful past. Our fear of a great filter is a reflection of our own deep and justifiable anxiety about our self-destructive tendencies. The idea of a benevolent guiding zookeeper is a reflection of our ancient childlike wish for a cosmic parent, for a wiser, older intelligence to protect us from ourselves. The search for them is, and has always been, a search for us. It is our species' most ambitious and most important act of introspection, an attempt to understand what it means to be human by imagining all the ways one could be something else. The zoo hypothesis, then, whether it is literally true or not, serves a final and perhaps its most important purpose. It forces us to see ourselves and our civilization from an outside perspective. It compels us to ask the most difficult questions. If you were a hyper-advanced, ancient intelligence, and you were observing humanity, what would you see? Would you see a species worthy of contact? Would you see a species that you would want to protect? Or would you see a dangerous, chaotic, and self-destructive species that was best left alone? The silence from the stars may not be an answer. It may be a question that is being posed silently to us by the universe itself. The question is not, are you out there? The question is, are you worthy of being found? We are left at the end of our journey, where we began, in the quiet, in the dark, contemplating the vast, silent, and possibility-filled cosmos. The final crazy alien fact is not any single verifiable piece of data. It is the simple and profound truth that our universe is so vast, so mysterious, and so far beyond our comprehension, that all of these incredible, terrifying, and beautiful possibilities can be and are seriously considered. The search for what is out there is, and will always be, the deepest exploration of what is in here. The universe does not owe us simple answers. It offers only a profound and beautiful mystery, and the search for the zookeeper, in the end, is simply a search for a reflection of ourselves in the vast, silent, and starry mirror of the cosmos.